Posted by Phil's family. Happened years ago, and I'll never forget it. When I was 12, my parents had split custody of me and I would spend every other weekend at my dad's house. This house was built around 1930. It was probably around 11 or 12 at night and my dad had gone to bed. I was sitting in the living room alone when I started to feel uneasy. I could hear distant screaming, and then I heard breathing noises that sounded like they were coming from underneath the floor. Our crawl space was directly under the floor and stray cats lived in it, so I decided it was probably just cats fighting. Even still, I felt scared, so I speed walked as fast and quiet as possible into my room. Creaky floorboards. I rushed into my room, turned around and shut the door. I made sure to shut it until it clicked and then I locked the knob. I got into bed and lay on my back, breathing heavy, basically frozen. My ceiling fan was off, but the light was on. Taped to the light was a cardstock party decoration of a smiling hot air balloon hanging by a piece of fishing line. I stared up at it as it spun around rapidly, alternating directions. Next I heard footsteps, sounded human, coming towards my door and stop in front. Then the sound of long nails tapping on my metal doorknob, and jiggling it super hard. I was so scared, but I forced myself to get up and slam the door. It clicked again as if I hadn't shut it fully the first time. After I slammed it, all the noises stopped and I no longer felt like I was not alone. The cutout hanging from my light slowly returned to normal. Had many instances of seeing shadows dart, lights float around, hearing voices that others heard when no one spoke, but never another experience this intense. Posted by Jupsy_Danger. An old friend from beyond. So a little background context for this one. Growing up, I have a very vivid imagination. When my family moved into my childhood home, we lived into a neighborhood that mostly had elderly people. We were the only young family in the neighborhood for a while. So as a young kid, I didn't really have the chance to make friends, so I mostly just explored the neighborhood. It was a gated community built in a square shape with a beautiful community garden/picnic area. It was in this area where I made my first friend, who said his name was Fred. He told me his family has been here for a few years and that is happy to finally have someone to play with. He showed me this old water drainage pipe that made a small little stream in the garden when it rained. Anyways, he said he likes to play in there. As a kid, I was scared of tight spaces, so I said I didn't want to go in there. He looked angry and started walking towards me. My mom called out. I ran up the steps that lead out of the garden to meet up with her. I told her that I had met a friend my age named Fred and that I wanted her to see him. When we reached the bottom, no one was there. I told her someone was really there. She told me to describe him, so I did. He was wearing khaki pants with black shiny shoes. He had a blue polo shirt tucked in and was wearing suspenders. My mom laughed softly and said that sounds like something kids my age would wear in the 50s or 40s. My neighbors had heard us and started crying. My mom and I walked over to see what was wrong and she replied that I had perfectly described what her brother was wearing. She said her family had lived in this neighborhood when it first opened. Her brother was playing on the storm drain one day when it was raining and drowned. They later found his body in the park and decided to make it into a garden in honor for him. Later that week she died in the park. When they released the cause of death, it was to drowning. The community board closed of that park the same year. And filled it all with cement and gravel. Posted by Sir Shive. My grandmother came back to visit after she passed. I would just like to share this story because it's nice to think about. Both my grandparents had passed before I was born, so never got to meet them. I only ever saw photos and heard stories of what they were like. My mother told me this one story about my grandmother and it makes me believe in another place we go to after we pass. So when my grandmother was alive, when she was going to the shop, she would always say to the children who were outside playing, "I'll bring you back some sweets on my way back." Even though she didn't have a lot of money at the time, she always gave them sweets before heading home. Her friend had a son and my grandmother would never miss going to his birthday party. When my grandmother passed, her friend's son's birthday came around. My grandmother's friend was upstairs folding clothes and when she looked at the landing of her stairs, my grandmother was standing there. Her friend said, "What are you doing back, grandmother's name?" My grandmother replied saying, "I'm here to see friend's son's name, for his birthday." Her friend said, "You've seen him now, you can go rest, my grandmother's name." My grandmother then left. My mother didn't hear about this story until a few years later because my grandmother's friend didn't want to upset her. I think my grandmother was hardworking and caring. Posted by TheWolfGuy21. The first of many. The first one happened 20 years ago or so. I was staying over at my dad's house for the weekend back when I was about 6, maybe 7. At the time my sister and brother were living there, so I didn't really have a bed. Instead I was sleeping in my father's room, on the floor, on a bug circular cushion. My father's house was eerie to say the least. I really didn't like being there, the reasons will become clear soon, but I had just gone to bed. My head was facing into the hallway. My father was downstairs laying down on the couch watching TV. As I was laying there, I started to hear some odd noises. I brushed it off as my father's cats, no big deal. I turned over to face the wall and closed my eyes. The noises continued and they were getting louder. I started to get scared, and something was telling me to turn around and look into the hallway. I wish I hadn't. There in the hallway was this black shadow, crawling on the floor, coming down the hallway. It then crawled up the wall and onto the ceiling. As any child would do at that point, I pulled the blankets over my head and closed my eyes tight. When I opened my eyes and pulled down the blankets, the shadow was gone. I knew it couldn't have been cats because A, cats really don't climb up walls or on ceilings, and B, I came to find one of the cats sleeping on my father's bed. I really never saw that shadow thing ever again. Posted by Ziggy Zebulon. The ghost that used to visit me in my room. I'm sure it was some sort of hypnagogic state that caused me to see this thing in my room. I was never asleep, or awakened by it. I was always trying to fall asleep, then I would feel a presence in my room, look up and see it / interact with it. It would leave my room, then I would get up and pinch myself or look at myself in the mirror to be sure I was awake. I've had lots of dreams and I've had lots of night terrors. This was not a night terror. There was nothing terrifying about it. I was always fully awake before, during and after. It happened at least 5 times over a span of 3 months. The first time, I was laying in bed when I felt it. I looked up, and there it was. Floating on the ceiling above my bed, a twisting cloud of black smoke. I'm not sure why, but of all the times I saw it, I was never afraid. Not even a little. I was somehow 100% positive that it was not a bad thing. It eventually would appear by my bedside and would float in front of me. Several times I ran my hands through it, it never moved the smoke or felt like anything. I know it sounds crazy, and this was years and years ago. I'm not schizophrenic or prone to psychosis, never had a psychotic episode, but the last few times I saw it, I talked to it. I know, crazy. But I was just, like 10,000% sure that it was a good thing. I was also sure that it was a possibility that it was there only in my mind, that nothing ever really was there, even though I could see it. I didn't care if I was being crazy, talking to it. Hey there. Good to see you again. And then, bye. When it would float through the wall and leave. It stopped visiting me, whatever it was. I'm very objectively minded. I don't doubt the possibility of paranormal experiences, but somehow this felt like something or someone I knew very well. Somehow. It didn't feel mysterious or unknown, as weird as it sounds on the face of it. It was a comforting presence, something familiar and unfamiliar at the same time, like locking eyes with a benevolent stranger through the window of a bus. A stranger who seems like they'd be nice. And you don't mind staring as they stare back, because the bus is pulling away and you both know you'll never see them again. The cloud of smoke, I guess, symbolized to me that there was something good out there, behind the curtain, beyond what I could see. That something was watching me and taking care of me. I missed that black cloud. It never spoke to me, it never motioned towards me in any communicative way. It just floated around, right in front of my face above me. Sometimes it would fizzle out into nothing, sometimes it would float away through a wall or a ceiling. Black cloud, if you're out there, it was very nice meeting you and I hope you are well, and I hope that we meet again someday. Also, I hope I'm not crazy, and I know I sound pretty crazy telling this story. But I don't think I am. I'd never seen anything like it before I saw it, I haven't since. There's something good out there. Something good. I don't know how I know, but we don't need to be afraid. Hope everyone's having a good week. Michael. Posted by Brookie _. My one of many stories from my grandparents' house. When I was freshly 13 years old, I was living at my grandparents' house and my cousin was visiting for the summer. We had to move to this back room in the basement while the upstairs bedrooms were being repainted. Basement is a finished wraparound with a kitchen, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. One night my brother and cousin asked if I wanted to go watch a movie in the living room. I accepted and told them to head upstairs while I used the bathroom and changed into something comfortable. As I exited the bathroom, I was a bit taken back by one of my little sister's baby dolls hanging by its neck on a clothes rack with my wallet chain. Assuming it was my brother trying to mess with me, I brushed it off and began walking to the staircase. As I approached the staircase, I heard someone aggressively whisper my name in the kitchen. I shook my head and told my brother to knock it off. I walk into the kitchen to confront him and the door that allows the basement to wrap around slammed shut. I sprinted upstairs, tripping at the top step and falling into the hallway. My brother and cousin at the end of the hallway looked at me like I was psychotic for running that fast. Upon realizing the entire family was upstairs, I shakily looked back at the door to the basement, realizing whatever it was definitely not my brother. Posted by Here4Laughs16. One encounter where I was petrified. I stayed the night at my best friend's often. I pretty much lived at her house half of the time until I moved states as a teenager. I've had plenty of homes with spirits, but I never minded as long as they weren't malicious. At her house though, there was something evil in the basement. Every time we had to do laundry down there, we would run and swap loads or grab clothes as fast as we could and run back up the stairs. The atmosphere was so heavy down there. Her room was on the main level, then moved to the upstairs attic later on. Since the house was old, the stairs were creaky and you knew which stair someone was standing on because they made a particular creak. Well, the malicious energy would walk up the stairs late at night. You would hear the door open, it'd walk up each stair to the top, then it's like it would always just disappear. Well, one night we were up really late. My best friend fell asleep and I was laying in the bed opposite of her trying to sleep. The attic was dark besides the light in the stairwell. I grew up with horrible insomnia from trauma, so it was pretty normal for me to lay in the dark just listening. Ha! Well, the door opened. Each stair creaked. No big deal. Until the malicious energy went past the top of the stairway and I heard it walking towards me. Each step was heavier than the last. It walked all the way until it was in between both of our beds. The energy was so heavy. I was petrified. I hid under my blanket like the 11-year-old I was until I felt like it left and I could breathe again. I jumped up, turned the TV on, turned the light on and climbed into my best friend's bed and woke her up. I will never forget that fear. It was scarier that it never went past the top of the stairway. But of course, when I'm the only one awake, it walked all the way up to me. This probably doesn't sound scary, but it was at age 11.